What's going on? It is your boy James. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. We are doing a little bit of political talk today, but we also do all kinds of different stuff: music, sports, just general current events, life. We talk about it. So yeah, make sure you check out some of the other videos. Don't just check this one out. Today we are doing a reaction to a Piers Morgan video. He has Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks on here, Clay Travis as well. Got to be a country singer with that name. Just can, but I've definitely seen this guy other places. So we're obviously going to watch this because the vice presidency debate is tonight. J.D. Vance versus Tim Walz. I'll be locked in on that. I'm sure we'll talk about it on the channel. So, like I said, make sure you're subscribed or locked in. Go follow me, Sit and Politic, everywhere, and you can contact me, Instagram and Twitter. Without any further ado, let's see what we're talking about and get into the business. Piers Morgan, Sit and Politic. Let's get
30% of Democrats said they wished that Donald Trump had been assassinated.
The right wing loves violence. And the minute that it touches Donald Trump, you guys go, oh my God, it turns out violence is right.
Tried to kill Trump.
Piers, it's okay. He's your friend. You guys did a show together. You're going to have access to him.
Didn't the last time you interviewed Trump, wasn't it kind of a disaster that he was furious with you,
Thank you,
right?
Clay.
Trump is a super bright guy. You can't succeed in business like he has without a lot of talent.
Well, he didn't.
Tim Walz a moron.
He's a miserable
Tim Walz
failure
an
in
absolute
business.
moron.
6 major
He is going to get embarrassed. Walz hasn't done a single solo interview with a national media figure since he was elevated.
Donald Trump is the dumbest man we've ever seen in public life, and these guys are pretending he's smart.
Lady in
he's
the
like,
middle's
well, how
pretty.
could he be a successful? He's not
Nice
a
that she
successful
showed up
businessman.
to-
You are like a guy who got broken up with and can't get over it. This is so deranged.
She's a chameleon. Why don't you admit she's a chameleon? All of you are chanting, lock her up, lock her up. She's our political opponent.
Okay, this with Cenk, by the way. First of all, we don't need this long-ass movie trailer before the video that we've already clicked on here to watch, Piers. Come on, cut the shit. Give me just a little taste, brother. We don't need the fucking whole ESPN top 10 highlight reel. And Cenk, dude, with the whole over-the-top shit, they're killing children. That shit you got to stop. It never plays well when you do it. If, at least for me. Maybe I'm alone. Let me know in the comments if you guys love the shit that he does when he guys are doing this shit. Fucking Hulk Hogan.
You guys loved it. You loved it.
What would it be like if you couldn't just come to a game and drop hundreds of dollars,
YouTube,
turn all the cards
with the
right away?
ads. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And then when you hit the next, and then it's like, fuck you, you need to watch both of them. Capitalism. We didn't even get out
Until
of
this weekend, border czar Kamala Harris was last seen at the US-Mexico border in 2021. She's previously explained her failure to visit by pointing out she hasn't been to Europe either. She also derided Donald Trump's border wall as a medieval vanity project. But that was the old Kamala. Kamala the chameleon is suddenly getting tough on illegal immigration, and she wants everybody to know about it. But is anybody buying it? Can a 20-minute photo op do anything to persuade the millions of Americans who blame the Biden administration for southern border chaos?
She's like, nah, I say shoot 'em. Fuck
Unsurprisingly,
it.
Donald Trump's not convinced.
More barbed
In a
wire.
typically understated fashion. He responded
Kamala's like, I'm just here. I want to see more barbed wire. Next time I come here, actually fucking triple the barbed wire. Okay? And we want the fucking wall to be fucking double the height.
the border visit by declaring Harris to be
wire.
mentally impaired and demanding she be prosecuted. But joining me to discuss all this and look forward to the vice presidential debate on Tuesday is the founder and host of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, the commentator Claudia Conway,
Who are you?
the founder of Outkick, Clay Travis, and the director of new documentary Vindicating Trump, the conservative commentator
He looks quiet,
Ganesh D'Souza. Welcome to all of you. Well, let me start with you, Clay Travis. The border czar, Kamala Harris, suddenly seems to be remembering what her job was.
I think it's a sign, Piers, of how much she's in trouble, that she went to Arizona, that she has reversed every policy she's basically stood for her entire political career. Remember, this was a woman who, when she was running...
Real quick, Clay, and anybody out there, any fucking Matt Walsh cunts that might be tuning back in, what gives you the feeling that right now, anyways, we have the debate tonight, we'll see what happens if there's a big shift there, but with how we've been going currently, at what point has Kamala at any point been trending downwards? At any point? What would make her feel like she's in trouble? This is what, like, let's be honest. I feel I'm pretty moderate, pretty independent. I try to see things, both sides, obviously, and be a rational person. So just at least be fucking honest with your take, though. Like, to say that she's down there because if that was the case, then maybe that's why she started to, shift slightly towards the middle months ago. But right now, like over the past few months since fucking the debate with Donald Trump, definitely, there's no reason for her camp to not feel like the ball is completely in her court and she's in the power position. If anything, she's down there just flexing, honestly.
In 2019, Piers didn't just say she basically wanted a wide open border. She said that any migrants that were being held in prison should get taxpayer funded gender reassignment surgery. That is, we should be paying in the United States to make sure that illegal immigrants are able to change their gender. I mean, this was absolute balderdash. This is madness. And I think this issue by itself, in conjunction with over 400,000 criminals, 13,000 convicted murderers, 16,000 rapists all enter.
She wants the Mexican rapists to be able to change their gender. That's one of her main things. So anybody that knows or has listened to Kamala Harris talk for any amount of time, if you're arguing in good faith, you know that one of the most important things for her is that Mexicans are able to get their cocks and their pussies turned inside out.
This country and starting to wreak havoc all over the citizens of the United States.
It's known.
I think it standing alone is going to cost her Arizona and Nevada. I think she's going to lose Georgia, North Carolina, and it all comes down to whether Trump can win one of the three states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, or Michigan. I think he can. I think this issue is the single worst, right alongside of the economy for Kamala and why she doesn't deserve a promotion.
Yeah, I mean, Cenk, the thing I would say, if I was looking at this with no horse in the race, which I don't, despite your frequent attempts to claim that I do, would be by going there now, it looks like political expediency, but it also reminds everybody just how bad the southern border crisis has been under the Biden administration. It's indisputable. The numbers don't lie. Surely it was a tactical error to suddenly go down there and pretend you really care when you haven't been there.
Of course not. So, I mean, I guess the thing is you're damned if you do or you're damned if you don't. That's why, obviously, Pierce has a preference. He likes Donald Trump. Let's just keep it real. I'll be honest here. When I'm watching his show, that is one thing. I like Piers Morgan's show, but that's something that makes me cringe. His insistence as if he's like completely partial in the matter. Like, it's okay to like prefer one or the other slightly. You could still try to be objective when you're looking at the specific issue. But yeah, this tiptoeing around and bullshitting is just completely fucking stupid.
In nearly 4 years.
She should just ignore it.
You're not biased against her at all, Piers. You just called her comma chameleon. But okay.
Well, she is.
The border issue.
That doesn't mean to sound partisan.
Right. No,
she just is. She is a chameleon.
Okay, sure.
So insistent on it.
You don't agree? Well, hang on. You don't agree with
Just
that?
agree to disagree on that point.
You don't think Kamala Harris deserves the title Karma Chameleon for repeatedly U-turning on previous positions? Seriously, Cenk? Seriously?
So hold on.
No, you hold on.
First of all,
answer me.
Piers, I'm not going to agree to your rando nickname for Kamala Harris. What the issue
Do you not think she's being chameleon-like?
Hold on. Can I answer the question? I brought up the issue that you're biased against her, and then you proved me right by saying, she's a chameleon. Why don't you admit she's a chameleon? Meanwhile, we have a mentally disabled person running against her. But we'll get to that. So in terms of the border,
fried his ass just now.
All of this is silliness. I don't do the usual partisan stuff. So first of all, on immigration, the Biden administration did not do a good job for at least a couple of years in between. The numbers have come back down now. But in putting her as in charge of any portion of the border was Joe Biden throwing her under the bus. They had nothing to do. She had nothing to do because he wouldn't let her. And so I don't think that the Democrats have covered themselves in glory on the issue of immigration. I think going down there for a photo op and just looking at, the border is just...
By the way, real quick, at least one thing I want to point out, this Clay Travis guy represents it as an all or nothing kind of thing. She's fucking horrible, this or that. And I do appreciate that at least Cenk is able to represent his own perspective as saying, like, hey, that's not something that, we could be proud of as liberals, but it still doesn't explain why not address it, why not try to make it better, if there's anything that she does by visiting to make it better, or at least get eyes on it. That's why the question was asked to begin with. She was criticized for not going. So at least, that's criticism heard and addressed, whether it's addressed in good faith, really, or if it's just ends justify the means to get elected. Or, like I said, but with that, we're being very cynical. And then it's like, if that's the case, then nothing she could have done would have been right. Because just not going and not getting eyes on that issue and actually being able to experience what it is at the border, that was important for a reason. And it was actually a good thing, I think, to hold her feet to the fire on. I don't think they were wrong to say, you're in charge of this. Have you been there? And I agree with the initial statement where she's like, well, I haven't been to Europe either. Like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? You're responsible for this, and we're asking you about this. If we were to ask you about something going on in Europe, and then your answer was, I had never been to the border, wouldn't that be fucking stupid? So it's like, get to the border and get to Europe too. Don't we have fucking private planes? Is it that hard for you guys to work that into your schedule in between going to the beach and shit? You guys can't, take a fly over to fucking Germany and talk to people, tell them, hey, we need you to fucking pay a little bit in NATO, playboy,
So meaningless. Every stupid politician does it. It gains them nothing. The media shouldn't feed into that. But finally, I think that people have to admit, look, Kamala Harris came to Donald Trump's position. I'm not thrilled about that, but that's a fact, right? And then Donald Trump said, oh, yeah, I don't want my own position, because he wanted to help himself in the election rather than protect you guys. He cares more about himself than the voters every single time. And there is no excuse you guys have for Donald Trump killing his own immigration bill other than his greed and his selfishness and his narcissism.
Dinesh, your response to that. And welcome to Uncensored, by the way.
I think that Kamala Harris going to the border is part of a strategy in which she is relying on the media to do work for her. And here's what I mean. The ordinary American is not happy with the way the country is going. And normally this leads to throw the bums out because the people who are in power are doing a bad job. But the one thing the Democrats have is virtual unanimity in the mainstream media. And so they're counting on a narrative that basically says to the American people, don't believe your lying eyes. Don't believe your pocketbook. Don't believe the crime that you see in cities. Don't believe the hordes of people swarming across the border, the reports of criminals. Instead, accept this portrait of a new and improved Kamala Harris that we're going to give you, this smoke and mirrors, this Kamala at the border talking tough. So they're counting on this fictional portrait, this movie portrait of Kamala Harris to trump, if I can use that term, the observations and experience of the American people. They're counting on the American people being complete and total suckers.
Okay, Claudia, welcome to Uncensored.
Before she starts to fucking just playing. But no, actually, I actually agree with this guy. I don't know if we're in full agreement with the final destination on our opinion here, but generally, I do think that he's correct. I think I even had I think it was really test of your faith in our political system when we saw the situation with Joe Biden. Joe Biden saying like, hey, I'm not dropping down unless Jesus Christ comes down and tells me that I need to drop out. So at that point, the fact that the political system was willing to push him forward and turn a blind eye, or like however you want to look at it, until literally forced, it either tells you that the person in that position isn't actually running the country because it's kind of inconsequential. So, the powers that be see that as something that's like he could be in place, he could be a fucking brain dead crash dummy, and the country can still run effectively. Or that, that person, there are no checks and balances on that person. And if really somebody was strong-willed enough, they could just stay in that position regardless of their competency. So that's really concerning. We almost saw that candidate put forth. We were literally like a month away from the convention or whatever, the Democratic convention, when she was going to be named. Kamala then ended up being named the nominee like a week before or whatever officially. So, I think that's really concerning. That should be almost as concerning, like the people that are concerned about Trump and January 6th and him turning us into some kind of dictatorship and not a democracy anymore. I think it calls into the question democracy, I think, just as much, to be frank, that situation that we saw play out on the other side. So I think it is definitely not to be taken lightly. And this guy is somewhat correct. I think that there is a lot of that. But that's politics as usual to a certain degree, where they're depending on a certain amount of the public to be ill-informed voters, or not even vote. They're depending on a lot of people not even coming out to vote, and then really turning out their base. So I think, just to be fair, that's something that exists in every election, not just this election, with every candidate just about. You end up seeing them, slightly change their views, which I don't even know if that's unhealthy, that somebody may have a certain view that they feel like they could push forward that is a personally held view at a lower level. And then when you become the person that's you're now responsible for representing the entirety of the country, which you have to understand what that means in the United States. I mean, there's a huge difference between, Southern culture, West Coast culture, East Coast culture, Midwestern culture. Like, when you're then put in charge to represent the entirety of the country, I think it's not necessarily a weakness as a leader to say, like, hey, this is still maybe something I believe in, and I'm able to, but I have to maybe dial it back a little bit to be able to make it palatable for, or even just possible to actually execute for the entirety of the country. So, like I said, there's truth to it. Let's hear this lady talk. I'm curious
You too.
where she's going
debutantes today. The American people apparently need to be complete suckers to buy into what Kamala Harris is now doing on the border.
I think there's some truth to that. I think that immigration is her worst topic, in my opinion. I think that the Biden-Harris administration, what they've done with immigration, has been abysmal. And I think that we can't really call her a chameleon. If we're going to call her a chameleon, we have to call Trump a chameleon and J.D. Vance a chameleon and everybody else a chameleon, because
but I would.
they're all flip-flopping.
Hang on, I would.
Yeah.
Cenk
Exactly.
wasn't.
Hold on. But when you're announcing Donald Trump, you'll never add that, or you'll never add a disparaging nickname before you introduce a topic to be discussed about Donald Trump. So you poison the well leading into this with that. Come on, like, be fucking real. Like, in that case, Piers is so
wasn't smart enough or calm enough to ask me. You have done. So let me just, for the record, I think they're all pretty chameleon-like. Trump has U-turned on many things, right? So's J.D. Vance, not least calling Trump Hitler. So yeah, I think they've all got a chameleon trait. It just so happens, and that Boy George is actually a friend of mine.
That you only name Kamala.
Well, no, because Kamala Chameleon obviously sounds very similar to Karma Chameleon, which was the big Boy George hit with Culture Club. That's why she's called Kamala Chameleon.
Yeah.
If Trump was called Kamala Trump, he'd be called Kamala Chameleon, because it would go better with the song. That's the only reason she got the name.
Move on.
But they're all quite chameleon-like, in my opinion. Well, it's true.
Yet conveniently, you found no derogatory nicknames for Donald Trump or J.D. Vance. You just happened to find one for Kamala Harris.
I've just said to you.
It's okay, Piers. It's okay. He's your friend.
Yeah,
you guys did a show together. You're going to have access to him. We get it. You want Trump to win. Let's move on.
I've said none of those things, other than I'm happy to say Donald Trump's been a friend for 20 years.
Didn't the last time you interviewed Trump, wasn't it kind of a disaster that he was furious with you?
Thank you, Clay. He actually issued 4 statements from the office of the presidency.
Let's move the fuck on. Please move on from the meta conversation. You know what I mean? Like I said, whether you're going to deny it or not, if you're going to deny that you have some bias and you have a relationship there, which you clearly, I think, is clear that you have, like, and if you want to go back and forth on it a little bit, okay, but we're spending way too much time on the fucking meta. Let's go.
He was obviously just out of there.
Holy
he
shit.
Issued 4 official statements lambasting me as so dead I was catching flies. So our friendship has had rocky periods. But ultimately,
now, though.
Trump has been a friend of mine a long time. I have friends, Cenk, you may not understand the concept of this. I have friends who sometimes I disagree with them. You're one of them.
I understand that better than anyone.
Let me come back
to
you. But let me come back to Claudia. Who's been waiting
agree.
patiently. Claudia, finish your point.
I think that her going to the border at this time is a little performative, and I focus on the Gen Z vote. And immigration is not as important to Gen Z voters as it is to all registered voters. It ranks about 61% of voters rank it as very important. But with Gen Z voters, I mean, they're not really looking at this, but I'm looking at this and I'm saying, why? Her campaign's been pretty smart, but, back to what everybody else was saying, I think this was just a little ploy for the campaign, just going to Douglas, Arizona and saying, hey, I'm at the border. Many Republican
what's the other option?
Congress people were upset about this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just don't think it worked.
I don't think it was a good move.
No, I just think it looked, as you say, performative.
I don't hate her take there. I think it's she kept it pretty reasonable, to be honest. I honestly don't even know where she lands on whether she prefers Trump or she prefers Harris, which maybe is a good thing. I don't know, but I mean, not a good thing. Really, communicate your fucking point. I'm very confused by what she was even fucking getting at, but yeah, I think it's definitely reasonable. But my only issue is, okay, it's a bad look because I guess it reminds people of of one of the few good jabs at her during the debate and such. But in media in general. But at the end of the day, the other option is, well, get that criticism, ignore it because it doesn't benefit you politically or whatever, and it doesn't benefit the perspective of your campaign. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think they did this being like, hey, this will probably hurt the campaign, but it's just the fucking right thing to do. I'm sure they thought that it would read way better. The fucking flipping the hair behind her ear, picture guys fucking laying down commando style, like it's fucking Black Ops, fucking slide cancel. But yeah, let's just go.
Clay, Trump's been giving a number of speeches in the last few days, which contained, the usual greatest hits, but also some slightly insane moments. Let's take a look at some of the stuff that happened at the weekend.
Joe Biden became mentally impaired. Kamala was born that way.
He fried her. He fried her.
She was born that way.
He's like, no, that bitch is stupid. She's a dummy. Look at him just letting it soak. He's like, I'm going to enjoy this.
And if you think about it, only a mentally disabled person could have allowed this to happen to our country. Anybody would know this.
I mean, Clay, look, I see Trump for what he is. He
fried
talks in this
her
way
ass.
that it makes people laugh. He's entertaining. He's brutal. He's bombastic. He loves insulting people. Is it a smart move for Trump to be calling Kamala Harris mentally disabled from birth a month before an election where she may end up being president of the United States?
I think it's an effective attack. I think the word choice, as you well know, with Donald Trump is sometimes the bull in the china shop aspect of his entire personality. He is an entertainer. That's at a rally. And I think it has to be taken in that context.
She's a dummy.
But what I think he's getting at, which cuts through and does connect, I think, with a lot of voters, is Joe Biden, clearly, despite all the people on the left trying to claim that he was the best version of himself and behind closed doors, he was sharp as a tack, which was what everybody said up until June 27th, as you well remember. Look, Kamala is not actually able to cite some sort of mental and physical cognitive decline to explain away why she's been wrong on everything. And I think this is important, too. Do you remember in 2004? In many ways, George W. Bush won that election because he said John Kerry was for the war in Iraq until he was against it, and they got him on flip-flopping. Your comma chameleon line for Kamala Harris, I mean, just think about this. She now wants to build a border wall. She doesn't want to ban straws. She wants to allow fracking. She now doesn't believe in reparations.
Oh, Lord.
Basically, everything Kamala Harris has ever said in her entire political career, up until 2020, she doesn't believe in anymore. And I think that's what's going on here. Look, Kamala's been wrong on every issue. I mean, I would ask anybody who's supporting her, name one thing that Kamala Harris has done really well, such that she deserves a promotion. Piers, on your show, I bet you've had...
Well, I mean, so to be honest, this is the thing. There was a period when it became pretty apparent that Biden was going to be kicked out of the fucking position or whatever. Like there was the murmurings. And at that point, it was most likely Kamala. A lot of what you heard was that she was going to be anointed into that position, which I didn't agree with. I think there should have been an open primary personally. But either way, from that time period, whether it be getting on the phone immediately with like delegates and things like that, she has maneuvered almost perfectly, honestly. The debate, like she's had many opportunities to fumble, and she hasn't fumbled. And they've also done a lot of risk management and prevented a lot of those opportunities too. Don't be wrong. But when she has stepped out, she's pretty much nailed it every time so far. She's represented herself really well. She hasn't fallen into any of Trump's attacks like this, calling her fucking slow. So, you know, I think like just seeing her maneuver politically and represent herself, represent herself too on the national stage, truly, not be, you know, vice president to Joe Biden, and her kind of just doing, you know, having a second chance at it. She's not the first person to try to run for president, it not go well, and then spin back around and, you know, have a better showing the next time around, and even, you know, becoming president. So,
production assistants, they got everything wrong. They probably didn't end up the overall producer of the show.
Yeah.
That's what Kamala Harris is arguing.
By the way, and also just to be clear, the moving their opinion, I kind of already addressed it earlier, but I feel like it's important to address here. People being willing to change their opinion is not a terrible thing. Politicians being willing to change their opinion is not a terrible thing. If at one point you're against fracking or something like that, you know, it's not the end of the world that you might change position on that, because whether you get new information that makes it apparent to you that we're not going to be able to move forward in the direction that you desired so quickly, or whatever the new information might be, point being, being willing to accept that new information and not be steadfast in your previously held beliefs, I think is a good thing. I would hate for somebody to refuse to right the ship just because, you know, stubbornness or some kind of like marriage to these ideas, when we're constantly getting fed new information and things of that nature. So, and like I said earlier, there is a certain level of, you know, intelligence that you get from being in the position, I think, of any position, and like literally put it at the lowest level possible. Just everyday jobs or whatever, you know, you're ignorant from the outside. When you step into that position, even if it's even if it's at your job and then you get promoted, a lot of times, you know, you may think that you have it all figured out, and then you find out that you're ignorant to some things and you get new information. So when you find out that the Anunnaki, you know, we need to produce a certain level of oil for them as well, you know, fracking seems like a better idea so you don't get obliterated.
4.
Yeah, I mean, Cenk, here's the thing,
Obviously.
Cenk. I know you're pragmatic. You obviously don't want Trump to win. I sort of feeling you're holding your nose with Kamala Harris. You don't want her to be the Democrat nominee, but she is. Therefore, you kind of, well, she'll have to win because I hate Trump so much. She's not a convincing candidate. I mean, she is a massive flip-flop, but she deserves the chameleon title. Every interview is full of word salad nonsense. You know, with Trump, you kind of know what he is now. He served 4 years. We know.
By the way, Cenk earlier said, you want Trump to win. That was one of the things that he levied against him. And Piers was like, oh my God, no, how the fuck could you say that? Obviously, bro, come on. Obviously. And like I said, that's not even a bad thing. It's not the end of the world to have an opinion. If you prefer Trump, I would still watch the show. I don't have a problem with that. Whatever. Fuck.
Good, bad, and ugly. Kamala Harris does not. She wouldn't inspire me to open a crisp packet. I have to be honest. Now, am I wrong?
Yeah, so guys, you're looking at it wrong, of course, I think. So, but let me explain, because it's a little bit more complicated.
Predictably.
I think that Kamala Harris is a typical politician, and that's not a compliment. I think she's an establishment Democrat, and I think 90% of politicians are establishment Democrats or Republicans. So if you're someone who's on the left or progressive and you think she's going to deliver unicorns and rainbows, no, she's going to deliver for her donors. So then if you're at home, you're saying, oh my God, that means I vote for Trump, right? No. The reason I'm voting for Kamala Harris is because Donald Trump is literally mentally impaired. He's a danger to this country, to our democracy, and that is not just a talking point. He's set to terminate all the rules, regulations, and articles of the Constitution when he didn't win in 2020.
But he's not going to do that, and you know he's not going to do that. You know that's not what he meant. This is the problem, though.
So, guys,
when you go after Trump...
So this is the problem, Piers. This is the problem. Whenever we're talking about criticizing Kamala Harris, you guys let me and everybody else go for 20 minutes. And then whenever I say the first thing about Trump, everybody jumps in to cut it off. That's how this thing is so biased. So let me tell you, you want to talk about mental impairment? Come on, guys. It should have been over when he said, let's put disinfectant inside our bodies. He's a very, very dumb man.
He didn't say that.
He thinks that clean coal is you take out coal and you scrub it clean. He thinks the F-35 stealth fighter is invisible to the naked eye like Wonder Woman.
Have you ever seen one?
He took a dementia test and thought it was an IQ test. The other day, he said that the audience in the debate went crazy for him. There was no audience in the debate. The man has significant mental problems.
Let's talk about another debate.
I'm not going to vote for a borderline lunatic. So that's why this conversation is nonsense. A typical politician versus a guy who tried to terminate the Constitution and is a verifiable lunatic. Not a hard question at all.
All right, let me bring in Dinesh. You spent some time with Trump recently for this new project of yours. What's your assessment of Trump now compared to, say, 8 years ago when he first came on the
paid me, I love him.
Took everyone by surprise, not least the Democrats, pulled off the most shocking presidential win in American history. What's your impression of Trump now?
Well, there are certain aspects of Trump that are exactly the same. I mean, you have to look at this guy as a kind of stand-up comedian. When he was making the lines about Kamala, you could tell he was getting the reaction that he was going for. And he's genuinely insightful and funny. He has a good sense of the one-liner, and he delivers it almost to perfection. Now, the point is, people said a lot of the same things even about Reagan. You know, the guy's crazy, he's demented. So Trump is not outside the mainstream in his political rhetoric. When Cenk says that he's a would-be dictator, he will terminate the Constitution and so on, all of this would be somewhat scarier if Trump hadn't already been in office. I mean, the guy was there for 4 years.
Already tried to terminate the Constitution.
How many leading Democrats, Cenk, did Trump prosecute and lock up? Let's compare that to the number of Republicans that have been indicted. Did Trump indict the leader of the opposition party and try to put her in jail? People shouted, lock her up, lock her up. But did he actually try to lock Hillary up? No.
No, before I come back to Cenk to respond to that, I want to play a clip from Dinesh's film here, Vindicating Trump.
He didn't go through with it.
This is relating to Trump being comparable
He
to
didn't go all the way through with it.
You're not a normal Republican. You are massive entrepreneurial success and a builder. You built the New York skyline.
I love you.
You're also a cultural icon. They fear that even though they know you're not Caesar, you do have that kind of dimension. You have that kind of power. You didn't do an insurrection, but guess what? Had you called for one, there would have been one. Sure. And there would be one if you called for one now. They know that kind of power.
Ask us.
They're scared of it. And so they're like,
we fucking
this
love
is the
you,
one
Trump.
guy we need to go after by all means necessary.
Trump, we love you.
Well, I don't know if I have that power. I'm not sure I want that power. I want the power just to make the country better.
I'll do anything.
I mean, Cenk, that would be my point, which is if Trump
Why were you blowing
was going to
him
do
there,
all
brother?
the things you claim he's going to do, he'd have done them.
Yeah, but he did. It's you guys pervert reality in a way that is amazing. You pretend that he.
Can you stop saying you guys?
Can I?
Dinesh
Okay,
just
you
said that.
bitch.
You just did it, Piers. How do I not
What?
include you when you just did it?
I literally
so can
said.
I answer the question?
You said that Trump wants to undo every part of the Constitution. I'm telling you that is completely insane for you to say that. Utterly nonsense.
You're insane.
He's never
You're
going
a
to do it.
lunatic.
He's not going to do it. You know it. I know it.
Okay, guys, let me just address the
Love
audience.
it.
Okay, these guys are trying to brainwash you into forgetting the things that Donald Trump actually did. He actually did January 6th. They actually did rush the Capitol. They did get inside the Capitol. People did die. He did say, let's terminate the Constitution when he didn't win. He did have a 3-hour meeting about installing martial law and rolling out the tanks. Everyone
Fry their ass up. Let's
said
go.
They would resign immediately if he did that, which General Michael Flynn suggested. He actually, when his chief of staff said, your fans are looking to murder your vice president, he said he deserves it. So you guys are pretending he didn't do these monstrous things, which he already did.
Actually,
and
Cenk,
Piers, if you ask me why I'll never vote for Trump, because he hates America, and he already proved it. When he lost, he said, my government, I'm going to smash it to pieces if I can't have it, because he's a spoiled little baby. You're pretending like it didn't happen when it already happened.
Boy, oh boy.
Had you read or heard anything I wrote or said about January the 6th, you'd know exactly how I feel about it. But you haven't.
Why did you just pretend that it didn't happen?
Exactly. But you're not actually using that to inform your decision now. Right now, I wonder if before you felt as if he had some kind of like responsibility. Say that now. Don't direct me towards some shit that you wrote before. We're having the conversation now. Say it now. I hate that shit.
You're like, well, he didn't do it. He did do it.
Well, the arguable point,
read what I said before,
needs to be argued in the court of law, is whether he inspired an insurrection, right? He vehemently denies that. You say he did. And it is an arguable point.
Do you have an opinion?
Clearly a riot at the Capitol.
Don't see that giant riot. Don't see him not calling them off. He didn't call them off, Piers,
there was a shameful riot at the Capitol that was violent and should never have happened. And I've said that repeatedly. On that, I totally agree with you. Clay Travis.
But now you're back to the insurrectionists and supporting them.
I'm going to come to America, Piers. You hate America, Piers.
I'll come to you in a moment. Clay, part of the problem with talking to people like Cenk, I love having you.
Oh, shit.
A lot of passion, a lot of verve, and so on. But once he gets talking about Trump, he literally goes mad every single time. He sounds like
nuts.
He sounds
Totally
like the very
nuts.
lunatic he's talking about.
America, Trump already tried
your
a
name
coup.
isn't
He had
Clay,
fake
Cenk.
electors.
Your name isn't
He
Clay.
had fake electors.
He sounds
I am the question at Clay.
Pretending he's normal.
Jilted girlfriend who's been cast aside. Look, let me say two things that are important here.
From who?
One,
by the way, see how they're making a conversation about nothing. Now he's fucking deranged because he's making a valid point that they're not actually contesting with. And Pierce isn't even contesting with. He's just moving on. He's like, oh, just read what I said before. And, hey, Clay, isn't he fucking crazy? No, bro, actually engage with the fucking point. Stop being assholes. And he's like, you sound like a girlfriend. Now get into some actual substance.
Pre-COVID.
I don't like any of them.
Let's go to early February 2020. I appreciate that, actually, because there are a lot of awful, dumb politicians. We can agree on that. And in fact, there's way too many all over the world, especially in America. But let me start with this. February 2020. Before, in my opinion, COVID leaked from a Chinese lab, which, by the way, you weren't even allowed to say because the Biden administration tried to censor everybody on social media. And now suddenly everybody's aware that that's the most likely outcome.
Although,
Clay,
hang on. Clay, hang on one sec. On that one point, the biggest study was released quite recently, which did seem to suggest that the most likely cause actually was from the wet market. Just for the record, that was the biggest independent study. I completely disagree with
that theory, but let's put that aside for a minute. February of 2020. The United States had 1.4-ish% inflation. We had 2.5% mortgages. Black, white, Asian, and Hispanic real wages were up. It is the case that the American economy had never been stronger since we whipped Piers's boys back in the good old Revolutionary War and became an independent country. Never had more people been living in a better manner than in February of 2020. Second part, okay? So a lot of people are looking at this and saying this is an economics election. Trump had the greatest American economy of all time. Everybody was doing better. I think that's why so many people are yearning for that era in many ways. Second part of this, I agree with both of you. January 6th, when people riot, whether they're Republicans, Democrats, or independents, there should be consequences and they should be prosecuted. Here's the problem. For 6 months, BLM effectively took over much of American cities and virtually nothing happened to them. Kamala Harris, the tweet is still up, raised money for the people who were burning down Minneapolis to bail them out. She argued we needed to defund the police. Many people out there who are reasonable, that are not MAGA diehards, that are not Donald Trump absolute adherents, look at the way that our government responded to January 6th when Trump said, I want you to peacefully and patriotically go to the Capitol, which always gets left out. They look at the way the January 6th rioters have been treated, and they say, wait a minute, what about all the people who took over Seattle, Portland, Minneapolis, Chicago, New York City, Atlanta, all over the United States, cities burned, and almost no one took any consequences for it at all. What we have to get back to, in my opinion, in the United States, and what I believe the Biden administration has done really poorly, is they have weaponized the Department of Justice against anyone with a different political persuasion. Piers, you mentioned it. When Trump could have gone after Hillary Clinton, he said, I won the election, I'm not going to do it. When Biden got into office, he used Merrick Garland as his attack dog, and they tried to not only bankrupt Trump, they tried to put him in jail for the rest of his life. And in comparing him to Hitler, they allowed everybody free rein to believe that they would be a hero if they killed him. And oh, by the way, they don't even believe that, because every time somebody shoots at Donald Trump or tries to kill him, Kamala gets on the phone and Biden gets on the phone and they say, hey, are you okay? We deplore this. If you really thought Trump was Hitler, you should just say it in public. You know what? I'm sad that he missed, which 30% of Democrats actually are, even though they won't say it publicly. They don't just dislike this guy. They want him murdered in cold blood, assassinated, because they are.
30%, I will say, is an aggressive number. I don't know if that's too far off, though, I'll be honest. I'm not in that boat. I think that is a disgusting thing, really, to wish death on people in general. But, I mean, I don't think he's completely off with that. But, I mean, that's not without... To kind of frame it in that way, it is to kind of ignore any responsibility that Trump may have over, like, rhetoric that is really divisive. So, you know, I think the political landscape that we're in, like, Trump has a pretty big deal of responsibility for why it is the way it is. You know, he hasn't made it this way on his own, but you know, he's had a significant amount of influence on it compared to the average person, even in his position. So
crazier than anything Trump's ever said.
Claudia, you're in a...
Nobody's ever said that. Clay made that up. He totally made it up. Nobody's ever actually said that.
Let me come to Claudia.
30%, according to a poll of Democrats, 30% of Democrats said they wish that Donald Trump had been assassinated.
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of silly.
41% of Republicans said it's time for political violence. Republicans openly have been talking about Second Amendment remedies for people that they disagree with. They've been egging on violence. Donald Trump laughed about how Nancy Pelosi...
A poll said 100% of people said, fuck Clay Travis.
His husband was smashed in with a hammer. So the right wing loves violence. And the minute that it touches Donald Trump, you guys go, oh my God, it turns out violence is right.
Killed Trump twice in the last 2 months.
Let me ask Cenk. I thought Clay raised a very good point there about the utter hypocrisy between the Democrat view of January 6th and the Democrat view of the BLM riots. Either you oppose rioting full stop or you don't. And the way that the rioters for BLM throughout that...
Well, technically that's not true, because you could feel as if something is worth and justified to riot over, and you could feel as if something's not justified to riot over. I think it's possible. Like, for example, if you don't feel like the election was stolen, then of course January 6th is completely inappropriate. If you think that there's some kind of like systematic targeting of black people or from cops or whatever it might be in BLM, that was the case, maybe that would be justifiable if you convince yourself that is the case, whether it is the case or not.
Period were treated compared to the January 6th rioters was clearly demonstrably different, wasn't it? So why? My question is why?
No,
why were they treated
wasn't.
differently?
Okay, no, let me explain a couple of things. So first of all, yeah, I agree that we need to be absolutely consistent. So sometimes people will lump in two different groups of people on January 6th. There's the people who went and, the much larger crowd that went and spoke, watched Donald Trump speak on January 6th. Most of those people did not go to riot at the Capitol. Then there's the people who rioted. So whenever it reaches the people who just listened to the speech, I go, whoa, 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 whoa. No, they just showed up to listen to a speech. They didn't do anything wrong. But when you go and you smash into the Capitol looking to murder Mike Pence and Nancy Pelosi, obviously you've done something massively wrong. Now, when it comes to the BLM situation, the original protests were like the original people listening to Donald Trump. They came out because they were deeply concerned about the injustice against African Americans in this country, and they were right. Then at some point, a smaller group of people committed violence. police went to go arrest those people, and they should. Of course they should. The one problem that I thought persisted after that initial outburst was some parts of like Portland and Seattle were taken over, and the police let them do that for some period of time, and that was nuts. And so that's when I started saying, guys, this is not progressive. This is not the right way to go. We're not for lawlessness. And then, of course, Trump did it in more spectacular fashion.
Let me bring Claudia in. You've been waiting very patiently.
No, that's pretty reasonable.
You've got a unique kind of perspective here from your own family, where your mum obviously has been out there very vocally extolling the benefit and virtues of Trump. And then your dad obviously hates Trump with a passion. You're in the middle of this. You've grown up around this. What's your kind of overview?
I'm in the middle of it literally and figuratively.
Your dad's getting cucked out by Trump. That's fucking sick.
I don't agree with anything my mother says about Trump. I think Trump gets away with a lot. I don't agree with a lot that's being said here, though. I think that there are nuances to rioting, especially like nuances with the BLM protests. They were not handled well, but we had people, rush into the Capitol, and that's the Capitol. We have Donald Trump
hang on, but Claudia, what's the difference between rioting one way and rioting another? It's still rioting. Rioting is using violence to get your way.
Correct. No. Absolutely.
If it's
I
to overthrow an
I think
election,
violence is never the answer. And I think
no, absolutely. So fucking no, Piers. It's not just rioting is rioting. You fucking dumbass. So if you riot and your goal to riot is to burn down a Walmart, that's not good. People should go to jail for that. Like, when you're crossing into a level of violence and danger, I get that. That should be punished. But no, if your intention of a riot is to overthrow election results, yeah, that's fucking actually more serious. It's not, I think,
when we have these nuances,
crazy,
people can argue,
idea.
they were protesting Black Lives Matter and they were protesting the election. Violence is never the answer. I don't care really what you're talking about. Violence is literally never the answer. Back to my perspective, my father...
Somebody's coming to fucking kill you. Is violence the answer? Somebody's coming to rape your butt. Fuck, I shouldn't have said the word. Hopefully you guys out there are still with me, and hopefully you guys got to see this content. Hopefully I didn't fuck it up with the algorithm, with the curse words, and just having too much fun. But make sure you like, share, subscribe if you still are here to this point, and you're still rocking with me, and you don't hate the video. If you do hate the video, fuck it, I guess, throw me a thumbs down. It's not cool, really, but whatever. And then if you liked it, thumbs up and share this bit. And then get in the comments, let me know how you felt about it, where you land with this discussion and just with the vice presidential debates and all that. I thought they were going to talk about that a little bit more, to be honest.
Hates Trump with a passion.
Your father is George Conway, who's a lawyer. Your mum is
Trump.
Kellyanne, obviously, who's a political activist and very well known. So just for viewers who don't know, so just continue.
Yeah, and the way I see it is, I will be voting for Kamala Harris, but I don't like a lot of the things that she says. But the reason I'm voting for Kamala Harris is for the sake of the safety of our democracy and for women's rights. I mean, Trump gets away with everything. He called Kamala a mentally disabled person. He said she wasn't black. He says, look at what happened in Springfield, Ohio, with the schools on lockdowns and the threats. And it's ridiculous. And he's the only person who can get away with all of this. Do I think that Kamala going to the border was a political stunt? Absolutely. But when I weigh the two, to me, it's not comparable. The rhetoric is not comparable. The rhetoric...
Honestly, a political stunt, I get it, but what is a political stunt when you're openly in a campaign? Him calling her fucking mentally disabled was a political stunt, for fuck's sake, because a lot of people are going to pick that up and talk about it. That was most likely calculated. So, like I said, I just hate the idea of killing somebody for engaging with an issue that we criticized them on. So, what kind of jiu-jitsu is that? I just don't get that. You know what I mean?
Precedent of a president's rhetoric is so important, and the rhetoric we have in this country,
but Claudia,
and even in this
here's what I would say.
right now, is ridiculous.
You say that, but Kamala Harris used phrases like Trump was the enemy of democracy. That Biden said he had to be stopped, and then two people in the last 2.5 months have taken that seriously, and they've tried to stop him by assassinating.
But if the threat that they're talking about, that she was just talking about, she's herself peaceful. You're about to talk about these people that tried to assassinate him. But she herself, she's a peaceful person, and she's choosing to make that decision first and foremost based off of just safety in the country, security in the country. I think that's a fair concern from her. I don't remember her name, but yeah, I think that she raises a completely fair concern. And second being women's reproductive rights, it's fair. But I think definitely the first one is 100% fair to look at that and say, I have some insecurity about the security of our country based off what I've seen so far. And that's honestly Trump's own doing, and he just has to live with that. Some people don't feel threatened by it, and that's fine. And maybe more people will choose that that's not something that they feel is either a big deal or that it's not a real threat. And a lot of the stuff that we've heard and stuff like that may be bullshit. But she has the right to feel this way, and I think the information that she has, it's fair to come to this conclusion.
And in the second case, we know from a note that the second shooter made, or was planning to shoot him, that he was using exact phraseology from Kamala Harris, literally repeating it in his note. So you say the rhetoric
threat's
is
real,
only
though.
bad if it's from Trump, or much worse, but it's the rhetoric
Oh,
from...
no, not at all.
But the Democrat rhetoric about Trump has clearly whipped at least two people with unhinged brains into trying to kill him.
Ridiculous.
Well, that, in my opinion, is disgusting. I completely condemn the assassination attempts on former President Donald Trump. But when I talk about rhetoric, I'm talking about both sides. I'm not just talking about, Donald Trump and the things he says. I'm talking about both sides. This back and forth, this game that they're playing with American voters, I think is abhorrent. I can criticize both sides, but when we look at the rhetoric of Donald Trump compared to the rhetoric of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, it's not comparable. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, maybe they shouldn't say he's a threat to democracy, which he tried to overturn the 2020 election, so there is some nuance there. But we have Donald Trump saying heinous things constantly. So, yes, we can criticize both sides, but it's not comparable.
Yeah, Dinesh, I want to bring you in on that.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in because I think that when you are trying to look at someone's character,
he's a comedian.
It doesn't just, or actually not even primarily, come down to, quote, rhetoric. You have to look at someone's character by their actions, both in the public sphere and personal. Now look at Trump. Here he is, and Clay mentioned this roaring economy that would have almost inevitably led Trump to re-election. But then you have his advisors come to him and say to him, the men in the white coats, there's a pandemic. You need to at least temporarily shut down the economy. And Trump has got to have known, and he did know, that if I shut down the economy, I'm actually shutting down my own economy. I'm jeopardizing my own chances of re-election, and yet he did it. So is that consistent with the idea that you've got this selfish guy who only cares about his own political prospects, doesn't care about the country? I would say no.
Which is actually a very good point.
You talked about the assassination
That's actually a very good point.
The assassination
Cenk, you can shake your head, but that's a very good point. Anyway, but back to Dinesh.
No.
Well, Trump, look at the way in which Trump has responded to both assassination attempts. I mean, this level of bravery, I think, is unmatched by anyone, certainly in the political arena, but maybe even alive today. Who is a guy who, when he's being dragged down by the Secret Service, pulls himself up, not knowing if there are more shooters, more shots, and shouts, fight, fight, fight? Who is a guy who, upon a second assassination attempt, where there is a man evidently a few holes down who has been trying to kill you, and you are a little annoyed that you've been interrupted in your golf game because you were just about to make an amazing putt? I mean, I don't know anyone alive who would react to these kinds of terrifying situations in this way. It's clearly a window into his character.
I completely agree. Whether you love him or hate him, you cannot dispute that Trump has shown huge personal courage when he's literally come under fire. Cenk, I want to play you a different clip. This is from John Kerry, obviously former Democrat grandee. He took part in the World Economic Forum panel on green energy. And near the end of the panel, a member of the audience asked what could be done to push back against disinformation surrounding climate change online. And he said this.
There's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have some accountability on facts, et cetera. But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence.
I thought that was an extraordinary thing to say out loud, Cenk. I mean, you got a guy who was nearly president of the United States basically saying the First Amendment is a real problem.
No. So first of all, look, the establishment has this certain agenda, and they put out a massive amount of propaganda to, back that in mainstream media. And then if anybody opposes it from the so-called populist right and the actual populist left, they hammer it down. But in this case, John Kerry was saying, hey, look, the guys like Dinesh D'Souza do these outrageous lies like 2,000 Mules, but there's not much we could do about it because of the First Amendment. So he's not saying get rid of the First Amendment. He never said that. And by the way, if he did say that, I would be 100% opposed to him.
No, he said it was a problem.
Meanwhile, on the right wing, they're saying arrest all the protesters who protest Israel. Donald Trump is saying, hey, Google and Facebook, I'm going to imprison you guys because I don't like what you're doing. Washington Post, he threatened to shut them down because they criticized them. He doesn't believe in the First Amendment. He doesn't believe in any of the Constitution. That's what he thought about, and he declared out loud that we should terminate the entire Constitution.
All right,
so if I thought John Kerry was 10% of Donald Trump and how much he hated the Constitution, then I would be opposed to John Kerry. But I don't think he said that at all.
Clay, I thought it was a pretty sinister thing for him to say, actually.
I agree with you, Piers, and I got a couple of things here. One, to me, and I respect Claudia's opinion, I respect Cenk's, even though he probably doesn't respect mine or Dinesh's, because I believe in the First Amendment. And I believe it is the single most important right that we have in the United States. And I believe that if you're only going to be a single issue voter, to me, supporting the candidate who endorses the marketplace of ideas to the largest degree is the candidate you should be voting for, and that is clearly Donald Trump here.
Kamala Harris.
Kamala has said that there needs to be more censorship. No. Kamala Harris has said that there needs to be more censorship. She demanded that Donald Trump not be allowed to have a Twitter account. Even Elizabeth Warren wasn't willing to go that far. She is radical when it comes to restricting speech. Let me also build on something Dinesh said, because I think it's important, because I think it goes to the heart of the argument that somehow Trump is going to be a dictator. In any of our lives, there has never been a point in time when the American public as a whole has more relinquished its freedoms than in the early days of COVID. In March and April and May of 2020, the amount of power that was undertaken by the federal government and was voluntarily relinquished by the American public to a large extent was scary. I want to hammer this because I think it's so important. There has never been a point in time in any of our lives, maybe other than right after 9/11, when a president could have adopted more dictatorial powers and taken a greater expansive role of control over the entire country. What did Donald Trump do then? He deferred to every governor and every mayor and let them determine, based on the results in their communities and their states, what the rules should be for COVID. In my opinion, Trump actually deferred far too much to lunatics like Gavin Newsom and Cuomo, who were locking down their states like crazy, but he allowed the Ron DeSantises and the Brian Kemps of the world in Florida and Georgia to make different decisions. That's the goal of federalism, is to have 50 state laboratories at a time. Compare it to what Joe Biden did when he came into office. He said, if you don't get the COVID shot, I'm going to fire you. He said that schools needed to remain closed because it wasn't safe. Biden actually took far more dictatorial powers during COVID than Trump did, and the left cheered him on. Again, if Trump wanted to be a dictator, there's never been a time in any of our lives for multi-months where a dictator could have taken over more. And he deferred. He let every governor and mayor make their own decision. That, to me, is the ultimate test on how much power Trump will have. He could have taken more than anybody ever has, and he relinquished it.
Okay, just to pivot quickly, because we're running out of time, but Clay, you start with this, which is the VP debate on Tuesday. Obviously, Waltz against Vance. Are you concerned that J.D. Vance, it might be a rough night for him?
For JD, no. I think Tim Walz, in all honesty, Piers, is the dumbest person who has ever been on American presidential ticket in my life. I think the challenge that JD Vance is going to have, JD, whatever you think about him, is Trump is a super bright guy. You can't succeed in business like he has without a lot of talent.
Well, he didn't.
Tim Walz is a moron.
He's a miserable
Tim Walz
failure
an absolute
in business.
moron.
6 major
He is going to
bankruptcies.
get embarrassed, I think. And the thing that J.D. Vance is going to be, pay attention to this, Piers. The thing that J.D. Vance is going to have to be careful of is that he doesn't pummel Tim Walz so much that people start feeling bad for him. Walz hasn't done a single solo interview with a national media figure since he was elevated. This is a guy whose wife bragged about leaving the windows open so they could smell the burning rubber of Minneapolis. This is a guy who lied about his military service, who is utterly unqualified to be a heartbeat away from the presidency. Of everybody on tickets, I don't think Kamala's qualified. I think Tim Walz, her worst decision. She should have taken Josh Shapiro. I think he's going to get embarrassed on Tuesday night.
Cenk, the dumbest we've ever seen, apparently. Tim Walz?
Yeah. So, look, guys, you guys live in an amazing imaginary world. They're like, if Trump wanted to be dictator, he would probably, if he lost an election, have somebody or a lot of people rush the Capitol and then not stop them, even as they're trying to murder his vice president. And he would try to terminate the Constitution. He did do that. He did all of that. And you guys don't acknowledge it. First Amendment. Kamala Harris has never said anything against the First Amendment. Donald Trump threatens to imprison anyone who criticizes him. You guys live in a delusional, imaginary world. So in your world, Tim Walz is...
Hold on, what person has Donald Trump ever prosecuted as a Democrat? Shouldn't you be able to point to at least one?
No, by the way, you know who's prosecuting Democrats? Joe Biden. I got no love for Joe Biden, but he went after Senator Menendez. At least the federal authorities did. They went after Eric Adams. They went after Cuellar.
I'm saying if you're going to say Trump is going to try to put his political adversaries in prison, name one.
Hold on. Clay, let me answer the question. You know why the federal government, the FBI, Justice Department goes after someone? When they have evidence. Okay, so Trump says, I want Jeff Bezos arrested because some Washington Post wrote something mean about me. And then he goes, hold on, let me answer the question. Then he goes to the Department of Justice, and they go, yeah, but what evidence do you have against him? He was mean to me. And they're like, no, we're not going to prosecute him because he was mean to you. Grow up, you little child. So which leads us back to the debate. So we're talking about Tim Walz being unintelligent. Are you crazy? The guy
but you're acknowledging, hold on, that he never has prosecuted any political adversary.
Hold on. Okay, well, he's the one who's came up with the lock her up chant. You guys again pretend it didn't happen when all of you were chanting, lock her up, she's our political opponent.
He didn't
you guys loved it. You loved it.
Hold on, Cenk, let's get real. But here's the thing.
And besides, Donald Trump is a criminal. So, Clay, what do you want us to do? You pretend to be in favor of freedom, and you pretend to be in favor of equality in the Constitution. Donald Trump is a lifelong criminal. He's broken every law that we can imagine. And you go, oh, let him go. He's our leader. He's our beloved leader. He should be above the law.
You are like a guy who got broken up with and can't get over it. This is so deranged. Like, Trump was never charged with a crime until he decided to run as a Republican after 75 years of being a public figure.
All right, let me bring in
Trump
hang
because
on.
I've always known he was a pea-brain little idiot. Donald Trump is the dumbest man we've ever seen in public life, and these guys are pretending he's smart. He's like, well, how could he be a successful? He's not a successful businessman. 6 major bankruptcies. The moron built 3 casinos in the same city.
He had a successful television show. He's built tons of buildings.
Hold on. Yeah, he had a television show
where
he yapped like he always does.
They never made a living outside of the government.
I can tell you he's got a very successful television show.
Failed the bar exam.
I can tell you his television show is very successful, and he showed extremely high levels of intelligence on that show, Cenk, because he may be the winner of Celebrity Apprentice. Let me bring in Dinesh.
That's not a business.
Let me bring in Dinesh.
He's a carnival barker.
Actually, it made tons. Hang on, the Apprentice, which he had a stake in, made tons of money, so that's not true. Dinesh.
He didn't run the business, did he, Piers?
Yeah, I mean that's what I was about to say about him.
He didn't run the business, did he?
He did have a stake in the business of the brand of Apprentice. Yeah,
now you're playing word games. You said he had a stake in the business because he had equity in it as part of his deal as an actor. They hired him to be an actor acting as a businessman when they knew, and they say now, Yeah, we knew he was a failed loser businessman.
All right,
but
he's
he was
the
so
most
loud. And,
Trump must be the most
that we thought he'd
successful
make a good
failed
actor.
loser.
Kamala ever done?
It's incredible that this pea-brained
That was true,
loser
though.
managed to become president against the most qualified
But what he
candidate
said was true.
in American history, Hillary Clinton.
I can tell you
But there
why.
you go, Cenk. Let me bring in Dinesh.
Because the American people hate the establishment. That's why.
All right, Dinesh, on the VP debate, does it matter what happens on Tuesday night? Does it have any real consequence?
I think it does, in part because, well, certainly in the Trump case, Trump is well into his 70s. I do think that people are thinking a little bit beyond Trump. I think that the question is whether J.D. Vance will sort of inherit the Trumpian mantle, so to speak. I think the debate's going to be a contrast in styles. And that is to say that Tim Walz is clearly a kind of over-the-top a populist from the left. He gesticulates wildly. He's the kind of guy who tries to make, expressions of being an ordinary guy who fixes his own car. And now J.D. Vance is a little more cerebral. And this is, in a way, a contest for whose rhetoric is actually going to speak more to the white working class. And that appears to be a key swing constituency in the election. So it's two populists. One from the right and one from the left, with two different styles appealing to the same group of people.
I totally agree with that. Claudia, final word to you. The VP debate, do you think people of your generation, do they pay much attention to the VP debates, do you think?
Absolutely, and so much more than other years and other elections. Historically, we haven't seen that a vice presidential pick has much impact on the election. But this year, it's different. Everybody's eyes are on Tim Walz and what he's saying and what he's doing with his cars, and everybody's eyes are on J.D. Vance and what he's saying about this person and that person one day. And tomorrow, I do agree. I think that Josh Shapiro would have been a much better pick, and I think he would have killed J.D. Vance in a debate, but that's not the situation we're in right now. So I'm a little concerned for both of them, quite frankly, but excited to see what's going to happen.
All I would say is that before the presidential debate recently, I was utterly convinced that Donald Trump would flatline Kamala Harris in that debate, and I was completely wrong. So it's been a very surprising race.
Me too.
And I've given up making predictions. I'm going to watch it with great interest. Thank you to my panel.
Yeah, interesting video, Piers. Appreciate it. Uncensored, nicely done. For me, the debate tonight, I'm excited to see it. I have more faith in Tim Walz than with any of these guys seem to have. I know Cenk was really excited about that pick. I probably am, if I were to identify myself here, I probably do fall in line more with his point of view, and as someone that leans like populist left, and so I'm excited to see how those arguments get articulated on the big stage. I'm excited that they'll be at the forefront of like a vice presidential debate, and I think it will matter. I think now just how things get disseminated, that debate's going to be cut up into hundreds of videos that are going to be put on the internet. They're going to be put on the internet and spread around, shared. So I think the stakes are bigger for those. It's almost similar to when, like when they talk about like JFK and the presidential debate being on TV and being televised, being a big thing, and just how he presented. In this case, and just like how much a debate really mattered at that point, how much that changed overnight. In this case, I think you're seeing the same kind of jump in importance of these debates. If you look back to the Kamala debate, I agree with, I don't know if it was this video, I think it was the beginning of this long-ass video that we did, where they were saying that, I think the Clay Travis guy was saying that Kamala went to visit the border because she's kind of panicking or whatever. And I feel the exact opposite. Going into the debate, things were much more of a toss-up. But coming out of the other side of the debate, once again, Kamala and her camp, they've done a very good job just managing her appearances, managing risk. So I don't think that it could really be overstated how important this debate actually is because of that, because of the lack of risk and access that we've gotten to the specifically Kamala and Walz campaign. So for Trump, you see him everywhere and anywhere doing these campaign speeches or whatever, saying that people who are mentally disabled. So I think when you look at that, it's hard to say that Kamala is the one that's feeling desperate. So yeah, this is important though. I do think tonight is very important. I'm curious how it ends up playing out. You know, I watched something the other day where they were talking about him saying that he's not a good debater. We won't have any time for that. You got to bring it. Fuck all that I'm not a good debater shit. You got to come and you got to be ready to talk about the issues. Fucking maybe clown JD Vance, just ask him, are you wearing eyeliner tonight? Keep it real with me right now. Keep it real with me right now, and we don't judge. And we'll embrace you. We'll embrace you with the eyeliner. We'll give you some tips. You might be able to give us some tips. Not me, though. But at the end of the day, yeah. So I'm interested to see how it goes. Hopefully y'all enjoyed the reaction here. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, show some love. Find us Sit and Politic everywhere. I am your boy, James. This was a lot of fun. We'll do it again.